Thanks, John. Very kind introduction. Appreciate that. So, as John said, yes, I am a recovered attorney. So went to law school and somehow, luckily, found my way into the business world and the MBA programs. And so what I'd like to do today is just talk about, well, about an hour till 3 o'clock, just talk about social media and how it's kind of changed the way that people market themselves and market their skills, both in an active way, but also in a very passive way, since resumes, usually the old resumes were on the desk, and when you pulled it out and mailed it, that's when somebody read it. Right now with social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, you live online, and once it's online, it's there forever, for good or for bad, for your pride or for chagrin. And so we'll talk a little bit about the LinkedIn profile, how you can use LinkedIn both in a career search, but also to help with your everyday activity in your careers, and we'll talk from there. And so, does anybody recognize? I gave this presentation to a current class. Does anybody recognize that subtitle? How I Stopped Worrying About Networking and Learned to Love Social Media. Anybody a movie buff? Dr. Strangelove. Yes, thank you very much. That's when I was like, oh gosh, I need to do something from MTV, I think, with the current classes now to go from that. But why don't we jump on in? The other thing I like to do is I'm open anytime to questions. Anybody who has a different idea, a best practice, please do. I like to get people engaged and talk about it. There's no perfect way to use LinkedIn. There's preferences. There's industry norms, depending on what industry you're in. There's different norms about where you are in your career search. So we'll just continue to go from there. So starting with social media, this is something I thought was interesting. It's talking all the things you can be online and what they're supposed to be used for. So all the different places you can be. Twitter, and this is all explained by Homer Simpson, what he does with it. Twitter is a way to announce I'm eating a donut. Facebook, you can tell everybody in your friendship I like donuts. LinkedIn is my skills include eating donuts. And so forth and so forth. Foursquare, this is where I am. Here's a picture of one. YouTube, Pinterest. So there's all these ways now to let everybody know what you're doing with the donut, right? And the key is using it properly to make sure you address what you want to the community the interest you want. With this proliferation, all of these social media tools could be used for you to market yourself in your career, depending upon what industry you're in, what your interests lie. So all sorts of different ways. But definitely the fallback one is LinkedIn, particularly professionally, and Twitter is very closely tied to that. So first I kind of want to go over about how LinkedIn's being used right now in the career world. How are they using it? And by the they, we have companies, recruiters, search firm, hiring managers, the folks that are looking to fill positions. How are they using that? We're going to go over this a little bit about what's this being used. So first one really is social media has really become the norm in career search. So in a survey in 2010, 89% of the firms that surveyed reported using social media for recruiting. I would say in 2012 now it's probably close to 95%, 96%. So it is a place you have to be and a place both for recruiting and for searching, and also a place you have to be if you're looking to advance your career or make connections in your current career. So that's an important thing to consider about that. Now also, this is a little bit hard to read on the screen, but there should be a large print up there. There's just a little breakdown about what people use for hiring managers use it. I think one of the important parts right here is this 92% of hiring managers in 2010 plan to use some kind of social media in their recruiting. And as you can see, LinkedIn is definitely the #1 source. Facebook is also being used quite a bit, particularly with new hires. And Twitter is a way also to be engaged with that. So these are 3 accounts that you probably should have. Facebook, maybe not, but a LinkedIn account definitely. And a Twitter account is also something you want to consider bringing in as you move through it. Again, all of this is a way for a new tool for people to use to directly reach out to candidates that they think are great offers. The #1 goal of a hiring manager is what? Bring somebody in at the least effort and investment of time possible. So referrals, somebody you know exactly who's right for the job, is who you're going to go to first before you decide to broadcast to the world, I have a job opening, send me your resume. Because then suddenly I have 1,000, 2,000 resumes to process. I don't know how to distinguish the two of these people, or the 1,000 people. How am I going to get to the top? Who gets to the top are people that I've heard of before that have been referred to me. And LinkedIn and Twitter are great tools to be able to use that and to be able to bring yourself either to the top of that pile or to bring yourself to the attention of people who may want to hire you or you may want to work with before you even thought that was going to happen. So just another way to do it. Sites are being used by managers both for hiring and for due diligence. So it's quite important to make sure you consider all this with your online presence and online media to go from. Okay, so this is just a quick little quote about how recruiters use LinkedIn very often. So the key part of it here too is keyword searches are what folks use. So when you think about your profile, and we'll talk about your profile, you want to make sure that your profile is forward-thinking, not thinking in the past. Where you are right now is the tools and the content of what your LinkedIn profile will be, just like a resume is. But that present should be out there about if I want to move into another role, either with a certain industry or sub-industry, a promotion somewhere perhaps, dealing with certain clients, then think about that language that will attract them to your profile. Okay? This quote I thought was pretty interesting too, and we'll talk about how the LinkedIn profile is different than your resume. A common mistake that people do is they just kind of upload with everything on their resume and put it on their LinkedIn account, and that's not really what you want to be doing. Think of your LinkedIn profile as the marketing tool that attracts people. So then when you get to that actually process of, do we want to bring this person on? The resume then is kind of that final piece of marketing tool. But this quote is what a recruiter does. I begin scanning through the summaries of profiles that appear. There is not a lot of information in the summary, but good enough to give the reader a good idea whether it's worth it to view the person's full profile. So often there's no need to even review a person's profile. So when people just put in, here are my jobs, here are my jobs, here are my jobs, we'll talk about it, very often for recruiters they're not even going to look at. Because if you didn't take the time to summarize what your skill set is, then oftentimes you're not going to make it to the next step. Okay? So all this is important to keep in mind as we go through it. Okay? I'll come back to that. Now in 2010, here at Haas, we did a survey of MBA recruiters about how they use LinkedIn for recruiting. And again, that's a larger printout in the handouts that we gave. And what was really interesting, I thought, for us was many of them, like McKinsey, the survey was talking about it for really on-campus recruiting for our students. But for campus recruiting, we don't use LinkedIn. However, our experience hiring recruiting is tapping into them. So that post-MBA lateral hire or promotion hiring, LinkedIn's becoming a big tool in order to do that. The day of posting jobs and hoping for people to reply is really coming down. But this just gives you an idea about what firms and how they use it and what the norms are. Okay. All right. So that's kind of an overview about what the recruiting is for. Any questions about that? Any people have experience? Yes, sir.
Different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Okay. With these various services, where, from the service perspective, where are they going with their services? And for example, Reed at LinkedIn has got the challenge of being able to monetize LinkedIn in more ways than he's currently monetizing it. Mm-hmm. And so I believe what he's trying to do is to figure out ways to facilitate the actual making of business in LinkedIn.
Exactly. I think so. In the sense, and I understand.
And so, if that's the case, mm-hmm. you could say, when we're saying here we're actively and passively marketing ourselves and our services.
Exactly.
Okay. How do we do that in these various social media frameworks? And also, as Haas has a LinkedIn vertical, okay, what do you see evolving with that? Are you clued into what Reed is trying to do?
I haven't done as much as you're speaking about that for the monetization, but I realize the drive for that is like Google, and in essence, LinkedIn can often be considered an advertising.
Yeah, they're wanting to get off the advertising model.
Exactly, and so trying to move away from that, trying to bring it in with different services.
Right, and the common financial test, I mean, the argument they say with Reed is, can you get people to work as hard as Reed?
Yeah.
Or are they going to use social networking kind of as you say, to save time, to read a resume, to pass on, to Twitter and chat, but not to actually dive into making deep relationships?
Well, I think that in the sense that the relationships that people more and more are going to find, and as I think as the generational shift comes up, where college students right now, pretty much everything is done online and through social media. Right now we're even examining getting rid of email within our full-time MBA class, just wiping it out and using Salesforce Chatter. So that kind of movement, because that's what the students are using, I think what they're hoping to do with LinkedIn is augment Facebook in the sense that this is the professional world where they live and play every day. That's how the connections are made. That's how communications are made. So I think, does that answer your question in that sense? On the business model side, I'm not as well versed in exactly how they're going to go forward for that. But in the sense of bringing people in for content, competing with all the other social media spaces out there, I think that's the viewpoint from a marketplace. Whether monetization, I'm not quite as well versed on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or concerns about that?
Could you expand on your comment about moving away from email and using just chatter?
So
it's the reasoning behind that.
It's an interesting phenomenon with us. We're working with Salesforce, and one of the complaints that students have is they get too much email. They are inundated with email, whether it's clubs from student services, from career services, from their fellow students, from potential jobs. They're just inundated with it. And the idea is that how do we reduce email with students? How do we reduce that need for that one-on-one? Because really email is really kind of a one-on-one direct conversation. And so what we're exploring with, and one of the other MBA programs in the country started doing this, and we're looking at it, is the questions go out on Chatter to basically anybody can answer the question. So it goes out to different groups. And so instead of having to email John or myself within Career Services and wait for us to respond, right? That question goes out into whatever group you are in Chatter, and whoever's in that group can then respond, and everybody can see it. And so instead of asking, hey, Mark and John, can you tell me the answer to this question? The question just gets put out, and then John or I could answer it. One of our other colleagues who are in that group can answer it that they may not even know. One of their classmates could answer it. And so it's this kind of crowdsourcing, in a sense, of information from a group that's in knowledge, be able to do that. I mean, we even have challenges, too, with social media, and I'll come back to LinkedIn, but our second-year full-time MBA class communicates. They set up their own Google groups to communicate. The first-year class came in, and before they even started, they set up their own Facebook. So even those two classes, just a year apart, are using different platforms to communicate internally. And they had been up and running months before they even came to campus, and so it had already stuck. They didn't want to give it up. And so I think the question is, well, how do we make it so we use that kind of Facebook communication or Google Groups communication and move it into the career services world to be able to let that information be shared amongst everybody else? Yes?
Increasing the traffic?
Well, the idea is, and I'm not as well versed, this is just an idea pilot that we're thinking about. We haven't gone into it. But the idea is that if one person has a question, probably more than one has the exact same question. So by having that question be out for all to see, that answer is then available for everybody else, and then you would reduce the traffic. Does that make sense? That's my understanding, but I haven't gone through it yet.
I understand the model that you're investing in. One thing that I kind of say is, well, why don't you have a community forum on your website that really is essentially a closed-ended chatter environment? Because when somebody has a question, most companies today, if you have a question, you get directed to a user forum or a community forum before you contact somebody. Now, I understand here it's a service organization, and you're in this collegial environment, so that may work. But I'm thinking the way that it maybe is done in a more scalable way is running a community forum.
That may be true, yeah. And I think that one of the arguments for Chatter is that it actually is scalable and forward-thinking and kind of integrated with the social media platform, very much like Facebook, that communication tool. So we'll see, but yeah.
LinkedIn has that. But I turn off most of that stuff or get one email link with the quote-unquote chatter because it is overbearing as well.
Well, LinkedIn can be a challenge too because people are then marketing themselves also. So there's a lot of that out there on LinkedIn where there's a lot of noise coming in from other people. And even when you look onto different groups, we talk about people join your alumni group and then they're trying to market something internally, and that's how do you get rid of that? And so I think one of the things we're hoping for with this Chatter is to keep it kind of contained within, and so we eliminate that outside interference. And there's also within Chatter, there's a group dynamic that keeps people, I don't want to say in line, but there's an ethos of what should be communicated there and what shouldn't be communicated. And it very quickly gets, there's very quickly an understanding of that group about what works and what doesn't work. Okay. Cool. All right, so with that in mind, let's see. First rule of LinkedIn, your profile must not suck, all right? It is better not to have your profile up than to have a poor profile up. If I can't find you on LinkedIn and I'm looking for, I may think, well, that's interesting, but I'll try to contact you another way. If I look for you on LinkedIn and I see that you have a profile that is really not great, that's my first impression. I've never talked to you, but remember, first impressions are the most important. That can oftentimes be the impression. So I had a conversation earlier about, putting up your LinkedIn profile. It doesn't have to be huge and expansive, but it has to be concise, and it has to target give your voice the voice that you want to do. So that's the first rule of LinkedIn. And one way to do that is to just upload your resume into LinkedIn. Is an option to do that. That's a tool to use, but please don't just click on upload my resume, a Word document, and leave, because then your LinkedIn account is really not going to be something that's quite what you want to do, market it. There's a number of sections on LinkedIn, I think, that people kind of work out, and we'll talk about them there. But everybody, how many people here have a LinkedIn account? Yeah, it's the norm. Everyone's got one. So what we'll talk about now and try and do, and people I hope share factors and assets and places within LinkedIn that have actually given you value. Okay, so we'll talk about those here. So on the home page, a number of areas here to think about. So this one right here, again, I told you, you can start to build it with your resume, but that's not going to be a good LinkedIn account. They also have a nice bullet here to improve your profile, which actually is a nice tool to use to click on to help say, hey, there's where gaps lie in your resume. A tool that people don't use enough on LinkedIn is this post and update. This is where LinkedIn becomes that marketing tool where instead of just being a resume out there, you can actually put information out there that drives people to your profile. You can also use tweets, which is another great factor if you're comfortable with having a Twitter account, but you can do an update or like. Another nice one is to share. Again, this is where LinkedIn is working to become not just a place to put your profile, but to be able to share within a group. Yes, sir, in the back row.
Posting an update drives people to your profile.
Well, what you're hoping to do if you, let's see, if you're in a group, now let's go into LinkedIn here, is let me just sorry, I should have done this beforehand. Oops. Is that the way it is the groups that you're in, when you're posting an update or sharing a document, you can say whether it goes out to everybody within your LinkedIn profile or within the individual groups. So if you're doing that in a professional mode, what you can do is mark it and show how you're staying current with what is going on in your marketplace, in your sub-industry. You hear a dynamic speaker. You can say, hey, I heard a dynamic speaker. Here's a link to the webinar. So it's a knowledge sharing ability that then by sharing knowledge that's relevant to the people within the group, that is useful, that isn't that kind of junk information that goes out, you then will hopefully, you're broadening and developing your brand. And so in the sense of driving people to you, it's not attracting other folks, but it increases your brand where, hey, if I need a question or there's somebody within a group that I want to go to for that information, you can become that kind of the go-to person. Does that make sense? Yes?
I'm job hunting, and I have 3 resumes, really. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have 3 focuses, and it seems to me when I have to put up in the top line what it is I do and in what industry, I've already shot myself in the foot. And the second part is where you outline your jobs, mm-hmm. and I look like one thing there, but when I do a resume and send it someplace, mm-hmm. I can tweak it to look like something else. So yep. I'm very dubious about, you said something earlier, but I don't know if you meant that, about putting that much information on LinkedIn. On the other hand, maybe I shouldn't be there at all.
Right. So it's all part of it. We'll just go into it right now. Is what's the best way to present your information on LinkedIn, right? There's the traditional resume way, right? Where someone, for example, and I'm going to use a few folks that I think have done a good job. So, John Park, recent graduate from Haas. He has a very traditional kind of homepage. Here's his nice photo. This is exactly what he does. He's a partner manager, publishing distribution solutions with Google. Here's a list of what his quick role. He has a short little summary here about who he is, and it's very descriptive. His is versatile business athlete with passion for building new businesses, leading teams, and driving growth in the technology industry. Proven superior performance, practical experience, a nice summary. But it's basically saying, here's what I am in an elevator pitch. This is what I would like. This is what I like to do. And so you can go ahead and put a small summary like that. And then John's early in his career, so his experience is very resume-like, where he kind of breaks out and shows the highlights from each of these roles that he's had. Okay? So that's one way to handle it. John made a switch from the military. He went to West Point, came to Haas, had done some finance with the military, wanted to switch into technology. So his resume is very focused on what he's done since he's been in the professional world. Okay? Now, that's one way that you can have your resume up there. Another way is right here, Andy Chan. So one thing is, look at Andy Chan, is he doesn't list he works in IT or even his title. He gives himself a little marketing blurb. Innovator and leader preparing students for an unpredictable and uncertain world. So, interesting. And when you go into what Andy does, he used to be the assistant dean and director of MBA career services at Stanford, and now he's at Wake Forest, so a friend of mine professionally and personally. Andy has a very large summary to kind of highlight what he's done. But then for his experience, it's just, here's where I've been. And so he can take that and mold, you can see where he's worked and the roles he's had in his career progression, but then he's the one who's defining in the summary what he's looking for, what he thinks, what he does in the marketplace. And so that's where LinkedIn, you can do that, particularly if you are looking in various areas, because you can't have multiple LinkedIn accounts. You do and should have multiple resumes depending on where your focus is. But that's where that prime mistake people do, is they think LinkedIn is my resume, and it's not. It's a marketing tool, same way maybe a cover letter would be related to the resume. LinkedIn is related to your resume, but it's not your resume. Okay? Yes. Oh, go ahead. Yep, back row there.
Where did he enter that kind of fun tagline for himself that showed up when you first?
Oh, yep. When he did his profile. Mm-hmm. So edit profile. It's this one right here. And you can go ahead and market your headline.
Oh, your headline. Okay.
Mm-hmm. A good thing to do. But I really think one thing to do is these work is LinkedIn is something you want to go in and play with. Is to be able to go in and click and see where it takes you and see where it goes and putting the profile out. The other great thing to do is find a couple profiles that you think are representative of what you want yours to look like. So take a look at other people's profiles and go through in the industry. Yes, you had the next question.
The question might be in the weeds, but you kind of progressed, within the same company. You kind of post multiple, things on LinkedIn, or just is this one company with just different roles?
If it was if say you move from analyst to senior analyst to associate to senior associate to VP to senior VP, right? That may be an argument then to just have that career progression, and then the summary being what you're doing right now currently and the skill sets that you have, or at least just in the current position where you are. Right? If I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, remember how that recruiter looked at it. I scanned the summary. I was interested. I dove in a little bit deeper. I would probably spend about 30 seconds looking through it and deciding whether I want to contact this person for the role I'm looking for. They're not going to scroll all the way down the bottom and read 3 bullet points under the analyst role that you had when you were 24 years old. They're going to look at what you're currently doing. Senior level, is this person write well? Do they present themselves well? Do they have an idea about what they want to do? That's the key point there. Okay. Yes, sir, back there.
In terms of the picture, I mean, the suggestion in the past with the resume was never put your picture on there. What's the read on?
Definitely have the picture here.
Yeah, the picture.
A professional picture. Yep. And someone like Jim here, who takes our professional photos for our website. So it's a professional photo. Yeah, and you want to get a nice headshot that you're going to want to work with.
What's the advantage of having it, or what's the?
I couldn't say advantage or not. It's just the norm. It's the norm on social media now. Is they want to be able to see who you are. Yep.
You had the keywords list. You mentioned that there's search on it. What do you think of like having bulletized keywords within the summary, like skills included, boom, boom, boom. I don't know if that's considered plus, minus, or.
Yeah. So let's go back to the keywords. So you have the keywords in the summary. There's also a place, and again, I apologize for scrolling down like this. It always makes. Is you can do these keywords here for contacting Andy. So there's multiple places where you can put.
And there's the skills and expertise area.
Yep. Sorry, did I scroll past?
A little above.
Up. A little more. Right there.
There we go. There we go. Skills and expertise. Thank you. I was scrolling and looking and trying to. And so there's the ways to do skills and expertise also. So there's multiple areas to do that. I'll go back there and then to you. Yes, sir.
Do you recommend having a headline?
Having it? Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes, I do.
And why?
It's just that initial glance that people, want to look for. So having a quick little headline. I probably, and I think it's maybe with my world is, in John world, is we full-time job, but we're always happy to go and speak somewhere else. So we're kind of, in a sense, marketing ourselves as a consultant. And that's where you also have to think about your LinkedIn profile. You're putting yourself out there in the world to be brought in as that speaker. If not, then your title may be fine, because that's what you're doing. I'm not a big fan of people saying, a dynamic business professional. Right? That vague.
Obviously, no one's going to say anything bad about themselves, right?
Exactly. But it's just got to be a little bit focused. So yeah, it's a little bit focused and think about it. Again, it's a little bit of your brand. What would you say your brand is? I promised I would go to him. Yes.
2 questions for you.
Yep.
One is I hear a lot of different things on whether you should, how many recommendations you should have. I hear some people say you at least want to have 2 or 3 because you want to show that there is somebody who wants to recommend you. But more than that, it's like, well, of course you can. Of course, if you find people and they recommend you, it's going to be good. Mm-hmm. And then my other question is going to be, when you're ready to do an active career search, is it worth buying the more premium version of LinkedIn and doing any kind of that lets you see how many people are coming to your account, who they are, mm-hmm. and is there a best practice for using that kind of analytics to see who's coming, what your volume looks like?
I would think so. I think John's nodding his head also. I think the free LinkedIn is fine. It's great. It's tough for networking, but it doesn't go very deep in the sense of who you can contact and the information you can get. So I think doing that next level down for business, mm-hmm.
which
is the account level that I have for my professional role, I think that's a good one for job searching. It's an investment. It's a little bit of an investment, but I think it's well worth the investment.
And then and specifically, how do you use the premium features in terms of you see people come to your profile, you see better traffic, you see more how you show up in searches. Mm-hmm. How would you recommend people use it? 'Cause I almost feel kind of spooky about like, hey, by the way, I saw that you in my profile, are you interested?
When I think somebody brought that up yesterday when I came into class about it. So I don't want somebody seeing what I've read or seeing what I've done, and I think that's also, it's a bit of a generational thing. Also, is a lot of early on the kids these days. I never thought I'd say that. But that's just the world. It's just very opaque, very transparent world, and they live in. I'm not as comfortable with that. But on LinkedIn, I want to have that interaction, right? Because I want to see professionally who's looking at me, who's coming with me. And it's very useful to be able to do that. Now on Facebook, I don't want that at all. I have a Facebook account for that.
So you think it's good? So if you see recruiter XYZ company who's viewing your profile, you think it's completely appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
Write a very professional note saying, hey, I noticed you viewed my profile. I'm very interested in XYZ company.
Yeah.
Would it be,
Sure.
Any questions I can answer for you? Or
exactly. Any questions I can answer for you. A warm introduction from some connection is always better than just a cold dropout. So it's also, the other thing about LinkedIn, it's a great networking tool to be able to do that. Yes, sir.
From time to time, I get requests to recommend people, and I generally don't. Is there an etiquette, and what do you recommend is the etiquette?
So it's actually, the recommendations on social media is actually, there's kind of 2 schools of thought. One is, well, there is the school get recommendations and put them up there. But there's also, and I think for me personally, I don't really think the recommendations are really that useful. Because you're just writing a vague recommend. This person's great. This person worked wonderfully. He's really nice person to work with. There's also some firms legally they don't want their employees to have that recommendation out there because you're saying it as an employee. This was a great employee. I currently work for the firm. There is that kind of agency relationship that I've now somewhat as the company kind of said something about them, and firms don't like having that out there. There are firms out there who just don't allow their employees to do referrals or recommendations. LinkedIn tries to get away from that, so this little click here, it says search for references. So this is a way for connections in my network that I know people that also know Andy. And so they try to make it easier, so instead of going to those recommendations that are out there, and we all know, you get a referral when you're hiring somebody, ask them for a list of recommendations. You may even not contact them. You want to go a step or 2 beyond. And that's what they're trying to do here. So I don't think it's worth a tremendous amount of effort to go out there and find a great recommendation referral. The caveat is if you're doing kind of a consultant gig and you want to have clients praising you, then I think that is a good branding marketing tool. Yep.
We could look at your number of connections that you have, because I would get a connection request from somebody I don't know, and I usually don't connect.
That's exactly right. So we'll talk about the etiquette of somebody decides, hey, I want to contact you, right?
Yeah.
I want to add a connection. So add connections. You can do all sorts of ways to find people to do it. It's just like networking though in the real world. You get a cold call from somebody, you don't know how they got your number, you don't know how they know of you, there's no connection listed, you're going to turn it down. Same thing in real world on LinkedIn. So that etiquette is also within LinkedIn. How do you connect with people in the same manner that you want to go ahead and befriend somebody? So let me see if I can do this on, right, so people I may know, right? So LinkedIn gives you this idea. They'll have this people you may know, so you may want to connect with them. So let's just say I decide, oh, okay, Michelle, who's here at Haas, so a new hire, maybe I should connect with her. I'll go ahead, she's a second removed, right? So I'm not connected with her personally, but somebody else within my organization. If I click on connect, it sends this generic invite. How do you know Michelle? And I'd like to add you to my professional. This is also, sending this to someone you don't know is just it's just suicide. You won't be connected on it. Same thing as if you just called somebody up out of the blue. So this is the easiest way to connect. But again, what you often want to do, a better way to connect, is how do you know that person? And you can connect through people in the groups. And that's a powerful tool, particularly when you're within the Berkeley-Haas groups or different industry groups. Hey, I'm also a member of this group on LinkedIn. I have a connection. We have something in common, an interest, a school. I was chatting with so-and-so who read an update you had sent recently. I thought that was really interesting. Be great if we could connect on LinkedIn. Now you're like, oh, okay, I will go. That's a professional connection. They've explained the link. They've explained how we're useful for each other, right? I'll go ahead and do that. And so being able to connect through groups can be really, really useful instead of just doing connecting. Yes, John?
One of the marketing professors here, this is about 5 years ago, did a study and came out with the finding that if you have too many connections, your credibility goes down because you're not discerning, you're not discriminating as to who you're letting in. I don't know what the number is, but it's an interesting, hard to say when you send out that generic, I want to connect with you. I don't even respond to those. I mean, we get 500 students connecting with us every year.
It's like, oh my God, I don't know these people.
Yeah, and if a student sends it to me like that, I will write back and say, I'm happy to do it, but obviously you didn't come to my LinkedIn seminar. Write one professionally, because then I will go ahead and do that. But just hitting that, connect. There's ways to do it too where, you can connect and, let's see, it's the add connections. You can just download, right here, import from Outlook or Apple Mail or other email application, and input all those connections. And then it will send out a blanket, which is, again, disastrous to be able to do that because it's just something you don't want to do. So that's why in that slide, with great connectivity comes great responsibility, right? And please, people know that one, right? Spider-Man?
Yeah.
All right. So that's the thing. They make it so easy to try to spread because LinkedIn's business model is we have these many people on LinkedIn and this many connections. That's great for them, not great for us. And so you need to think about when you connect it and do it thoughtfully. Yes, sir.
So other than reading somebody's name in the crime section of the paper, are there good reasons why you would want to disconnect or de-link somebody from your network?
Why would I yes, I would. So let's see why I would do that. If I found somebody, and we all know it, those folks who kind of are the spammers, the serial spammers, who send out information, I don't find it as much on LinkedIn as the other social media, because it's not really, LinkedIn has that reputation as a tool for a professional gathering place, whether Facebook, someone rants on Facebook. You don't see a rant very often on LinkedIn. So it's far less common on LinkedIn to pull out from that. If somebody violates some kind of professional norm and you really don't want them to be in your network, then you pull out of it. But I haven't run into that problem, at least with my own network. I don't know, does anybody else have that where they're... Yeah, I think the bigger problem is joining groups, and then the group communications pull way off from what the group was intended to be, and then you pull out of that group. Yep.
How much attention should you pay to LinkedIn's message about these are people you may know, and then separately these are all the other people who've made updates? What should you make of that when you get that from LinkedIn? Depends on the update. So for right now, so here's the updates I have, right? So someone by the name of Tenny Frost. I mean, I don't know who that is. It tells the connections. So the connections aren't really that useful to me, right? But one of the things you can do is you can click on all updates. You can go through, and this is a nice feature they recently had, just worrying about Haas and coworkers. So this is all the people I work with and students who I may want to keep on. This is an update of what people are sharing and tweeting. So if I just want to keep up on groups that are tweeting. You can do all sorts of different updates on it. I don't really pay too much attention to those. I'll have a few people who may. You can do it by company who's following what. So you can sort through quite a bit here about what groups people are doing. And this is that kind of transparency that sometimes makes people nervous, because you can really dial down new photos. I don't know what uses that is. A nice one here, whatever jobs are posted. So if you're following jobs and kind of want to see what's going on out there.
How useful is that, do you think, in terms of locating opportunities?
Not very, because you'd really want to refine it, because I'm sure Saddle River, New Jersey is a very nice place, but I really don't need to see that there's a marketing manager position there. It's just not useful for me, and so this will do it. What is nice for this update is you can customize it and kind of work through. I don't think it's as useful for that kind of feed, but it can.
So just generically, do you think LinkedIn's more effective for having people find you versus you finding jobs on LinkedIn?
I think it's useful for people finding you. I think it's incredibly useful for you finding information about other people, other positions, other opportunities, networks. I don't think it's as effective as a kind of information feed that comes in. So
I've used it successfully for getting specific technical skill sets out of people who are wanting additional revenue to augment their salaries, or they're in between jobs.
Perfect. Right. But is it a very specific search that you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a great way to do. So some tools you can do to be able to do that is searching by particular skill sets. That's very much a key word search. The search features on LinkedIn are actually pretty good. So almost never, unless I know exactly who I'm looking for, do I use just the basic search. Click on advanced search. Excellent way to search. What the additional account types give you is the ability to search with more indicators. Does that make sense?
Right, and to save profiles in the group. I totally advocate the next level up, because I have that one too. And
the business, you have the business level?
I have the business premium account. And
business premium, yeah.
That's because I was developing all the LinkedIn groups for a long time too. So the ones at Haas. And so that next level up lets you search for profiles of individuals, maybe in a specific country that you're interested in networking within, or an industry, and then you can save them, and then anytime someone else joins that group or that search parameter, then you'll get notification, and you set the notification. Do you want that daily, weekly, never? You just go in, and that's really nice. And there are a number of other features to that next level premium or next level of account that I think are worth it. It's, what is it now? Is it like $50 a month now or something?
So so this would be, so right now if you want to look, and it's not a plug for but my current account is a business account.
in my role. And the one Carter's talking about is this Business Plus, which is $40 a month for an annual, and they give you a $10 break on that. And gives you more features to go from there. And so, and here's what we're talking about. The more profiles you're able to save, get introduced to companies you target. So it can be an investment. Depending where you are in your search, you can come in and out of it. Yes, sir.
So, when they do the updates, and I see people connecting to other people, one thing I always notice is someone just revamped their profile, the picture, the new summary, and I think that person's looking for a job.
Yeah, probably. Right. Or they came to one of my workshops.
Oh, they came to one of your workshops. So I'm thinking, I go back, I got all this great stuff, Mark told me, I'm going to revamp, and my boss is like, well, look at this. Oh, Tony's looking for a job. No,
But it's not a bad thing for your employer to know that you are looking for a job, right? Sometimes.
Depends.
That's the subject of John's next seminar. Should your boss know you're looking for a job?
Is there any way for us to do that and not have it show up like, oh?
But I think honestly, the update, most people don't see that update anyway. So, I mean, in the sense of, your boss isn't sitting there every day. Which one of my employees has updated their LinkedIn profile? Aha! Got him, right?
LinkedIn sends it to me.
It will. But we get a lot of stuff to do. I saw a hand up. Yes.
Yeah, so I have a question regarding etiquette. So, and it's kind of related to what you said. So, should you link in with your current coworkers, or is it better once you leave a job to link in with your ex-coworkers?
It depends. I link in with most of my current coworkers. That's an easy connection. Like, I turn to Deborah, who works next to me on the desk. Hey, mind if I LinkedIn? Yeah. And stay connected. And then you join that LinkedIn. And then when you leave, people are moving around all the time, so I think it's fine to
But then to link in with your boss, who may or may not know how much activity is going on your LinkedIn account.
Right. That's true. But there is visibility in the sense of, hopefully, in the perfect world, you're using LinkedIn more dynamically than just it's going to sit there like my resume does on my desk, And then while I'm looking for a new job, suddenly I've revamped my resume. Suddenly I've revamped my LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a little more dynamic, so there will be updates going on, shares. You will be connecting with people. You may revise your LinkedIn profile here and there. You may add a new photo. But I don't think that's a red flag that goes up, because that's what people do every day. Yes, sir.
Following on that question of the updates, is there a way to turn off that ability for LinkedIn to send out an update?
Yeah, I believe, yes.
Because I've been wanting to update my LinkedIn profile, but there's some wholesale changes, and so I don't want to go in and make a few changes and then make a few changes later and then make a few changes later after that, but rather have the update go out once it's all changed. Yep. And is there a way to stop those interim updates from generating that update to all my whole context?
I believe so. I don't know exactly where you would find that right now.
To the right.
What's in the profile? What is
view profile?
Yeah, so we're in view profile, edit profile. And sure, as you walk through, you're able to change the amount of connection that you have or make it visible or not.
I think it gets updated, but you just turn off the updates. No one sees it, so you'll see it.
Yeah,
you'll see it.
But then
you'll see it, but it won't get broadcast
your profile. Then you can make the update public, and then it'll get dispersed to the various scope of groups that you like.
Okay.
Because you've got a difference between networking connections and everyone, if I recall.
Exactly, first, second, third connection. Yes,
you were on that premium page a minute ago. I just had a question on that, just for you or anybody else that's using the next level up. There's a feature called InMail that supposedly lets you contact people that you're not connected with. I'm kind of curious of those people that are using it. Does that work? Do people respond better if you're using that and contacting someone directly? Or is it just, you still need to find a connection?
Well, Mark, do you mind if I answer?
Yeah, go right ahead, please.
One of the advantages that Next Level Up provides is with first connections, you will have someone's email address. You will see it. You don't get that at the free basic level. So InMail is very important if you want to connect, send a private message to someone like an email. The InMail is the way to do that. With the Next Level Up and probably subsequent higher levels, you get more InMail. So you may not be a first connection with someone on LinkedIn yet, but you want to become. You can send an invitation, or you can use an InMail as a more private, personal way of contacting them. So you would get more of those as you go up in the level of account that you have. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm curious whether people respond.
Yeah, no, they do. I'm not finding, people have no prejudice against it. It's sort of just part of LinkedIn.
I think it appears as a regular email, right? It's like they're getting an email from you.
Exactly.
Yeah, you just don't know their email address.
So if we look here, so Bernie, I'm connected with Bernie at Zynga. But I want to message him through this. It's basically an email that shows my email where it's coming from. Whereas if I'm connecting with somebody I'm not linked in with, so he's a second connection, I want to connect and I just want to do that, it just gives me this LinkedIn note.
But you can send him an email if you have.
I could still send him a note and it'll say, and it'll provide with this to be able to, invitation to connect.
But it's more like a link. It's more like a LinkedIn message. It's more like a LinkedIn alert versus the
Exactly.
first one's more like a personal email just from you, right?
Yep.
Person to person.
Yep.
I think there's more responsiveness. I just saw recently someone wanted to link in with me. I didn't know them. And it used to be, why are you contacting me? But now there's a pull down where you can reply to like an invitation or a message without having them become a network connection. I don't know if you're, so I found that at least that person, I didn't ignore them or archive them, whatever. I just replied to them and said, gee, why are you contacting me? I haven't heard from the guy, so maybe it was a spam, but.
Maybe a spam, or you just clicked on it and didn't quite know why. So on that connection question here, so Romeo is a second connection. When I hit connect, here's different ways I can send an email, and that's what I get from my business profile, rather than just sending just a quick connect. You can also do get introduced. So my first degree connection is Matt, who works with Romeo. So if I look on a second degree connection and say get introduced, I click on that. Everybody see what I did there? So I want to speak to Romeo because I have a friend who's interested in being an art director at Zynga, but I don't want to just send an email out of the blue. So I figure out, okay, well, what's my shared connection? It's Matt Salazar. Okay, I know Matt really well. Let me go over connect. Let me go get introduced. Then it says, oh, here's where the connection is there. And then for Matt, I can tell Matt why I want to be introduced. And the email comes out and is a different little form of email. It says, doesn't say, Mark wants to be friends with you because I'm already friends with Matt. It says, hey, would you mind introducing, passing through this message on to Romeo? Okay. So there's a lot of different little nuances in there. And in one way is they're trying to automate what everyone should be doing anyway, which is developing connections with people before you try to contact them, right? So trying to find out, I'm interested in working for Zynga in this particular department. Let me use LinkedIn to research not only who do I know that works at Zynga, who may I know, who may be working at Zynga that I don't know is there, like an old high school friend or college friend or someone I worked with 2 companies ago. But then about who can I network with, because the power isn't just me connecting with somebody I already know. The power is me connecting with somebody and tapping into his network and getting that introduction. Because if he's willing to introduce me to one of his colleagues, that in itself is an implied recommendation. Because you're not going to introduce somebody that you really don't think is going to reflect well on you. So that secondary and tertiary way of using LinkedIn and doing research can help. Yep.
Yeah, is there any strategies or tactics that increase people to respond to you? Like what's the key messaging that will actually drive response, right?
2 things. One is showing where you're connected, and it's incredibly powerful. It would just be, I saw that you went to Haas, and that connection is there. I have alums who say, if anybody puts Berkeley MBA in the subject line, I will talk to them once. The second time I talk to them is based on that first conversation. So this Haas network and the Berkeley network is an incredibly powerful network for getting somebody to talk to you who normally would not talk to you. You can connect with your undergraduate institution if you went to graduate school here and undergrad somewhere else. You can mention a friend's name. I recently spoke with Bernie. He recommended that I call you, and you let Bernie know about that. You can say, I read an article recently where you were quoted. I mean, that's a powerful compliment. I read something that you wrote or you said. I thought so highly of it, I had to reach out and talk to you. I mean, which one of us doesn't like, oh, that's, well, of course, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I'll talk to you. I'll give you a download of wisdom, right? So any of that kind of I recently saw you speak. You can always try, and that's with LinkedIn, with Google. You can Google stock somebody pretty well. Find something about them that you can mention that shows that connection. And if you don't, then you think about who can I connect with that I think could connect with that person, right? But you're always trying to do that warm introduction. It's that same thing in the room. It's always nice. You go in a room where you don't know anybody. The best way to get to know people is either just go up and start talking to them, but even better is if you have a friend who walks you around and introduces you. And that's what you're looking for, that friend to kind of introduce you. Okay.
So questions. Yep. By that token, you need to have these first level connections, right? So there was an earlier question of how many we should have. So it seemed to me that the more you have, the better, right? Because then it's easier for you to reach the second level.
Yes and no. As long as the first level connections are people that you actually know and are personally well. So that shotgun approach of just getting as many first level connections that I don't know them and they don't know me, they're not going to let you get beyond that second level.
That's right.
Exactly. Right. So, and that's what some John and I have is, I have 240 first-year full-time MBAs graduate every year, and I automatically almost have 240 requests to be with LinkedIn. I try to make sure I only work with, get that first level of access to students I've worked with. Now that may be 180 of the 240, but at least then I know who they are, I talk with them, and if somebody asks me about them, I can speak about it. So go from there. Yes, sir.
I thought that on LinkedIn, it doesn't specify anything. Once you hit 500, it doesn't specify numbers beyond 500.
Yeah, I think it's at 500 plus. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
That's what Andy has.
So there's really, it's 500 or 2,500 or 10,000. It doesn't really matter in your perspective of setting up those second connections.
Yeah, and on the top right there, you can see here it says your LinkedIn profile. I've added since April 26th, 19,000 people to my network. Now, I don't sit there every day just emailing people. This is people kind of connect on through, and that's they're adding their shared connections, right? Because when Nidja adds somebody in her network as a first degree, that's a second degree for me, so that's in my network. And then theoretically, if you add up connections, you can get a third level. Let me go. We have about 7 minutes left. This has been great. Let me just talk about a couple things that are tools I think that are nice for you to use LinkedIn as a research tool to proactively reach out. So on the right here, it gives you this people you may know. You can see who's viewed your profile, right? So who's taken a look and seen my profile. You can see a lot of MBA candidates have looked at my profile. And again, that can give you an idea whether it's, if an executive recruiter is looking at your profile or somebody looking to join your firm. What's that? I don't know what the exact algorithm is, but usually it's a connection with a potential second degree connection. So they think I may know Ferdinand Jasnin. There's an algorithm probably is, I have a lot of people in my network that went to Berkeley and to Haas, therefore, and probably with the number of connections he has. No. They just look at the connections. They go from there. And so here's how I'm connected. So Fernando is right now a second degree connection. There's 6 people in my first degree network who are connected, so that's probably how they come up with it. To work from there. So for research purposes, let's take a look here. Companies you may want to follow. Let me do this real quick. Here's the job search arena if you want to kind of look at that. What I'm looking for is, hold on one second. I'm at the point. It's a company search. So Let's try Zynga again. And company Zynga. So give choice of Zynga. So it's something that's interesting. Gives me the choices. Here's opportunities. So I click on Zynga. Couple things to know. One way they're monetizing, I think, is every company now has their own page here on it for recruiting. So something that's definitely they have to have. But what's nice when you're doing research on a company is you can see where your connections are right here, how you're connected to Zynga, first degree, second degree, third degree. So a lot of second degree, a lot of people from Haas, Berkeley have joined there. This insightful statistics is actually pretty kind of cool. Because what's nice, if you're doing some due diligence and you're thinking of joining a firm, you can see who just left Zynga and talk to them, hopefully have a really honest conversation about why they left Zynga, what they think the atmosphere is like. So it's one thing to talk to a current employee who may or may not give you the whole dirt. But when people change, you can actually then, oh, okay, this person left. I can do some due diligence and see why they left, where they went to.
So you know there's an opening there.
Yes. Also an opening there. You can also see who's being most viewed. So that's also a nice viewpoint to have there. The other one is learn more about working at Zynga. There's a listing of jobs there. Again, what employees are saying. It's on their homepage, so of course it's going to say something good.
So those research tools are only available through the business?
No, they different levels of an R. I couldn't tell you right now. I've had the business premium long enough. I don't know what is and what isn't. You kind of get that connection. You can follow the job, the company on that.
I think at the bottom of every
Yep.
it tells you there's a link that's like upgrade your account. That gives you the breakdown between the three.
Mm-hmm. Yep. To work from there. There's also, and it should be here in Zynga. Let's try Google real quickly. So here's Google. It gives me college alumni that are working there. Oh, right here. People have posted blogs, Google activity. So you can actually find out quite a bit of information that's going on. This other part here, this Google new survey, tells when people are promoted or have new jobs there. So again, another way indicator to see what titles are people moving into in that level there. So a great tool, really, really neat tool to do research on companies that you may be interested in doing due diligence on firms, and to go from there. So I think that's where the power of LinkedIn comes, is using it as a marketing complement to your other marketing materials, your resume, but also using it as a tool for you to continuously get your brand out there, but also use a tool to research about that information. Yes, sir.
Critique resume, recommend format and problem action result, critique LinkedIn profiles.
Could we do a critique on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
John?
Can we do a critique on the profile?
On your profile?
In the same way, if I brought you my resume, or I did when I was in school, and you said, oh, you want to do problem action result, you want to quantify your results, you want to use this format.
Yep. And actually, we have webinars on that too that speak to that. Yeah. Okay. So.
Where do we find those? Are they recorded webinars?
Yeah. Yeah. Go into CareerNet, Career Resources. You go into the dashboard in Haas Alumni CareerNet, and then there's a resource page in the middle. Click on that, and you'll see our webinars on demand. And we have quite a few actually. We've had some professionals, somebody from LinkedIn even did it. One of the students did something as well.
Yeah. And another, just as we're closing out here, I just want to give one other profile. This is a colleague of mine, friend Andrea Bruno, who marketing. I think she does a really nice job with her LinkedIn account. And in fact, I used it in a lot of people from webinars. She actually emailed me and said, "Why are you looking at my profile all the time now?" I'm like, "Oh, you're a great example." No, I'm not stalking you. But I think she's that mix of working professionally, working professionally, but also consulting. And I think she's just really, she's done a nice job of putting herself out there. It's very large. She's that tradition, you know, she's been in technology since we graduated from college in '87. Really thoughtful about the skills and expertise that she has out there, thoughtful about her summary, has a few nice recommendations that are out there. The groups and associates, she's thoughtful about what she's in, ways about to contact her. Nice thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of really nice LinkedIn profiles that fit what you want to do with LinkedIn. So you don't, that's this fear of starting my own, you know, what do I write? How do I say what's right? It's okay. You know, plagiarism is only illegal in certain spaces, not on LinkedIn, right? So don't take their name or their careers, but use it as a guideline and a format to help you go from there. All right? Okay, cool. So on that note also, let me just get to, I'll say thank you very much. This is basically, we covered all these messages I want to talk about. So if anybody has a question about that, please feel free. You can email me directly at friedfeld@haas.berkeley.edu. I'll be more than happy. So if somebody here, you say, hey, I was in your webinar, would you mind taking a look at my LinkedIn profile? I'll be more than happy to do that. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then John will offer it school-wide in a year or two. Go from there. But I'll be more than happy to do that. And thanks a lot. I mean, I really appreciate that. Just the question and answer, that was just a neat way to get information. I hope everybody found it useful. And then you'll go home and teach your kids a little bit about social media, all right? So, all right. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of the day. Appreciate it. Cool.